You might think humans have
Alone?
always been alone. But Earth once had at least 8 kinds of humans walking,
Humans were
hunting,
always alone,
making tools,
right?
and raising children under the same sky. In this video, we will not list every obscure branch. We will follow the most important ones: Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, and us, Homo sapiens. They lived, adapted, mixed, and disappeared. So why did every other human vanish, while only we remained? Watch until the end, because the answer is not simply that we were smarter. You might think humans have always been alone. One planet, one human species, one kind of
One
person looking
human?
up at the stars, making tools, telling stories, burying the dead, getting stressed about social status, and eventually inventing comment sections for some reason. But that is not what Earth used to look like. For a long time, Homo sapiens were not the only humans here. There were other kinds of humans walking, hunting, making tools, raising children, surviving cold, crossing landscapes, and looking at the same moon from different places. Some were strong and adapted to ice. Some traveled incredibly far. Some lived on islands and became strangely small. Some are so mysterious that we mostly know them from fragments of bone and traces left inside our DNA. And then, one by one, they disappeared. Neanderthals vanished. Denisovans vanished. Homo erectus vanished. The tiny humans of Flores vanished. And somehow, after this long, crowded, confusing human family tree, only one branch is still standing. Us. So why are we the only humans left? The answer is not as simple as we were smarter or we killed everyone. The deeper answer may be that Homo sapiens survived because we became unusually good at something more powerful than strength: building flexible groups, sharing information, adapting quickly, and turning culture into a survival weapon. The first thing to understand is that human did not always mean Homo sapiens. Today, when we say human, we mean us, modern humans, one species, one surviving version. But evolution was never that clean. Human evolution was not a straight ladder where one species politely stepped aside so the next one could take the spotlight. It was more like a messy family tree, with branches growing, splitting, crossing, breaking, and sometimes touching again in ways scientists are still trying to understand. At different times, Earth had multiple human relatives alive at once. They were not monkeys. They were not movie monsters. They were not failed rough drafts, whose only purpose was to make us look impressive later. They were humans in the broader sense: tool users, survivors, migrants, hunters, parents, problem solvers, and social beings trying to keep their groups alive in difficult worlds. That changes the question, because if Homo sapiens were not alone, then our existence becomes much stranger. We are not simply the humans, we are the last humans. And being last does not automatically mean being best. Sometimes the last survivor wins through intelligence, sometimes through luck, sometimes through timing, sometimes because the world changed in a way that punished everyone else. So to understand why only we remain, we first need to meet the missing humans who once shared the planet. One of the most important missing humans was Homo erectus. If Homo sapiens are the last humans, Homo erectus were one of the great long-distance survivors of the human story. They appeared long before us, spread far beyond Africa, and lived for an astonishingly long time compared with many human species. They were not a tiny historical footnote. They were a major experiment in how to be human. Homo erectus had bodies that were more human-like than earlier ancestors. They walked efficiently, traveled across huge landscapes, used tools, processed food, and survived in different environments for hundreds of thousands of years. In a way, they were the first great travelers. They showed that humans did not have to stay in one place. A human body could move, adapt, follow food, cross regions, and turn unfamiliar landscapes into places where a group could survive. But even long-lasting humans can disappear. Climate shifts, changing environments, smaller populations, competition, isolation, and simple bad luck may all have played roles. And that is one lesson Homo erectus gives us. Surviving for a long time does not guarantee surviving forever. A species can be successful for ages, then meet a world where its old strategy is no longer enough. Then there were the Neanderthals, the human relatives most people think they know, mostly because popular culture spent decades drawing them like angry gym teachers made of hair. But Neanderthals were not stupid cave brutes. They survived Ice Age, Europe, and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They made tools. They hunted large animals. They used fire. They cared for injured individuals. They likely had complex social lives, and they lived in environments that would make many modern humans immediately request indoor heating and emotional support. They were close enough to us that when Homo sapiens moved into some of the same regions, the story was not only conflict, it was also contact. Modern genetic studies show that many people outside Africa still carry Neanderthal DNA today. That means Neanderthals did not vanish completely like smoke. Part of them moved into us. And this makes their disappearance more haunting. They were not too primitive to matter. They were not too alien to mix with. They were not some separate monster species standing outside the human story. They were close family. So why did they disappear? Probably not because of one simple cause. Their populations may have been smaller and more scattered. Climate change may have stressed their food sources. Homo sapiens may have competed with them for territory and resources. Interbreeding may have absorbed some groups. Disease, isolation, and demographic pressure may have done the rest. Their extinction was not a single dramatic battle scene. It was more likely a slow tightening of the world. And then there were the Denisovans, maybe the most mysterious humans in this story. Neanderthals left many bones. Homo erectus left many fossils across large regions. But Denisovans are different. For a long time, scientists knew them mostly through DNA, from tiny fragments found in Denisova cave in Siberia. Think about how strange that is. An entire kind of human discovered not because we had a complete skeleton standing in a museum, but because a small bone held genetic information that said, there was another human here. Since then, more evidence has suggested Denisovans lived across a much wider world than one Siberian cave. Traces of Denisovan ancestry still exist in some modern human populations, especially in parts of Oceania and Asia. So Denisovans are like ghost humans. We do not know their faces clearly. We do not know their stories in detail. We do not know how many groups existed, how they lived day to day, what they believed, how they spoke, or what they called themselves. But we know they were real. They lived, adapted, met other humans, and left traces inside the living. And that is one of the strangest truths about being Homo sapiens. We are the only humans left, but we are not made only of ourselves. Inside the many modern bodies are genetic echoes from humans who disappeared before they could leave us their names. So why did Homo sapiens survive when the others disappeared? This is where we have to be careful. It is tempting to say we were simply smarter, but evolution is rarely that simple, and honestly, humans are not always convincing evidence for their own superior intelligence. The better answer may be that Homo sapiens combined several advantages at the right time. We were flexible. We could live in forests, coasts, grasslands, deserts, cold regions, and unfamiliar places. We could change diet, change tools, change plans, and learn quickly when the environment shifted. We were highly social. We built relationships beyond the immediate family. We traded materials, shared stories, copied techniques, learned from distant groups, and created networks of information that could travel farther than one person's body. And we had culture that accumulated. One person learned something. Another improved it. Another taught it. Another carried it into a new place. Over time, knowledge became bigger than any single brain. That may have been the real superpower. Not one genius human standing alone, but many ordinary humans connected by language, teaching, memory, imitation, ritual, and trust. When climates changed, networks helped. When food disappeared, shared knowledge helped. When groups met, exchange helped. When danger appeared, cooperation helped. Maybe Homo sapiens survived, not because we were physically stronger, but because our social worlds became larger, faster, and more flexible than those of our relatives. We became a species whose best tool was not only stone, fire, or spear. It was the ability to make many minds act like one expanding memory system. So why are we the only humans left? Not because the other humans were meaningless. Not because they were all stupid. Not because evolution was always aiming at us like we were the obvious final product. We are here because a long chain of human relatives lived, adapted, failed, mixed, disappeared, and left pieces of themselves behind. Homo erectus showed how far humans could travel. Neanderthals showed how close another human could be to us and still vanish. Denisovans showed that an entire human world can survive mostly as a genetic shadow. Homo floresiensis showed that evolution can create forms of humanity stranger than our imagination expects. And Homo sapiens became the last branch still growing. That should feel less like a victory parade and more like standing in an empty room after a family gathering where everyone else has left, but their voices are still somehow in the walls. We are alone now, but not completely separate. Some of those lost humans remain in our DNA. Others remain in our tools, our myths, our questions, and the uneasy feeling that the word human used to be much bigger than us. Maybe the strangest thing about being the only humans left is realizing that we were never meant to be the only humans. We are the survivors of a crowded human world that disappeared. And every time we ask where they went, we are really asking what made us stay.